Hello, I'm Mr. Farrell, and I am going to be reading you a story today called Blips on a Screen, written by Kate Hannigan and illustrated by Zachariah Ohora. Subtitle: How Ralph Baer Invented TV Video Gaming and Launched a Worldwide Obsession. Rudolph Rolf Baer loved games. Money and food had grown scarce everywhere after the Great Depression began in 1929. Rolf looked for ways to make life a little more fun. Chase, chess, handball, and kickball were good distractions for his sister, Isle, and their friends in his German hometown. When Rolf turned 10, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party were blaming Jews for Germany's problems. They kicked Jewish kids out of school. Suddenly, Rolf's classmates didn't want to play with him anymore. Facing imprisonment and even death, the Bears fled Germany just weeks before the border closed. When they reached New York City in 1938, the children changed their names to the less German-sounding Ralph and Jane. 16 now, Ralph had no more time for games. He took a job in a leather factory and, with an inventor's spirit, quickly found ways to make the machines run better. On the subway to work one morning, Ralph noticed an advertisement. Hey, I think this could be me. He liked the idea of working with radios. People around the world tuned in every day to gasp over mystery shows, laugh with comedians, and worry over wartime news. He enrolled in radio repair classes. I chased all over New York City repairing radios, did it all myself, pickups, repairs, deliveries. After America joined World War II in 1941, Ralph used his radio skills in the army. But once he returned from England and France, he looked to the future. Television. Veterans were coming home and buying houses, and television sets brought newscasters and celebrities right into viewers' living rooms. Within a few years, more than 15 million households owned one. Ralph took a job designing televisions, but he found it boring to passively watch a screen. With their crisscrossing lines, he said, they looked suspiciously like board games. So why not use them to play games? You're already late, his bosses said. No time for games. For 15 years, Ralph pushed the idea of TV gaming aside, working at military electronics companies in New York and New Hampshire. He combined his radio and television knowledge with his army experience. Soon, Ralph was inventing sonar systems for tracking submarines and snooping equipment for monitoring enemy radios. But as he sipped his tea, drove his car, and tinkered in his basement workshop, Ralph couldn't stop thinking about making television more fun. Ideas ping-ponged around his head. Waiting for a bus one afternoon, Ralph sat down on a step, pulled out a pencil, and began to write them down. What I had in mind was to develop a small game box that would do neat things. When Ralph returned to his office, he wrote up his notes. He knew it was important to document a great idea, not just to create a record of his invention, but to cement his place as the first person to come up with it. He and a friend initialed each page and wrote the date, September 1st, 1966. As quickly as he could, Ralph began turning the light bulb in his head into something real. He tested, tinkered, and tweaked his ideas until finally a single blip appeared on a screen. Ralph stretched the spot tall, collapsed it short, swung it left and right. He called it TV Game Unit 1. This looks like it has potential, his boss said about Ralph's prototype or early model, but it better do more interesting things than this. Ralph knew it could. While his days were busy with top secret research for the electronics company, locked himself in an office with another engineer, Bill Harrison, and worked deep into the night. Music blared behind the doors so nobody would know about their classified project. They taped a plastic overlay onto their TV screen to make the game look more engaging. It showed a picture of a bucket using two controllers pointed at one spot. Ralph and Bill pumped the line up or down, filling or draining the bucket. The calendar read May 15th, 1967, marking the first two-person TV video game contest in history. Ralph lost, but he didn't mind. Ralph added a second blip. Now his gaming system could move a pair of squarish dots on a screen independently. Two-player chase games were born. With the help of engineer Bill Rush, they introduced another spot. Now two players could interact with the third blip. The minute that came along, we knew what the answer was. Ball games. Are you still fooling around with that stuff? Asked his manager. Ralph certainly was. Ralph worked long days and late nights. In the secret fifth floor office he called the little bitty room, and in his basement at home, we played games downstairs in my lab, and the kids played them. They thought it was pretty neat. He could barely contain his excitement for bringing games onto TV screens. I'd be driving home and I'd stop at a red light saying, I can't believe it. On January 15th, 1968, Ralph applied for the first of many TV gaming patents, or legal protections, from the U.S. government. A patent ensures that inventors get not just the credit, but also the money they're due from their inventions. Ralph tested his ideas. When they failed, he tried again. Together with his engineers, he strategized, simplified, streamlined. By January 1969, Ralph was ready to show his jumble of wires, circuitry, and controllers to his bosses. Before the meeting, they decided their TV Game Unit 7 needed spiffing up. Covering in vinyl made it look like wood. They called this prototype the brown box. Despite their stuffy suits and neckties, the bosses had fun with Ralph's games, but they were a little baffled. What are we going to do with it? This is a military electronics company, you know. Ralph did know. He would have to find another company to implement or produce and sell his inventions. But how? And who? For the next year, he took the brown box to everyone he could find in the TV business, but nobody had time for games. Finally, one television company thought the brown box showed a hint of promise. They called it the Skillovision. Later, they renamed it the Odyssey. As his invention rolled off assembly lines, Ralph designed ways to make it even better, but nobody listened. Ralph felt left out, ignored, forgotten. My objective was to help them, but help isn't always appreciated. Months passed, and Ralph began to have doubts. Would anybody want to play? Was it all a waste of time? Lying in a hospital bed after minor surgery, Ralph stared at the walls and felt blue. Suddenly, his colleagues rushed into the room carrying an oversized check from the TV company, and on it was written a big number, $100,000. The Odyssey was taking off. It was like somebody sticking the key in my motor and turning on the engine. It was the first indication that maybe, just maybe, we hadn't wasted our time. For Ralph Baer and for game lovers around the world, life was about to become a whole lot more fun. Fantastic! By far the game of the century. User feedback, November 1972. And that is Blips on a Screen by Kate Hannigan. Hope you enjoyed.